Okay, so this is video number 2 for the garden update for 2021, and we're going to be starting some tobacco seeds today. So I've grown tobacco in the past a couple of times, once on a fairly large scale, just kind of to see if I could do it. I live in an area that used to grow tobacco as a commercial cash crop, and although it was all flue-cured tobacco during those days, it's not really done anymore, so I wanted to try and do that, and yeah, let's jump right in. So from my large growing days, I did some seed saving from a number of different varieties. So this is what you would be looking at if you bought tobacco seed from somebody who was saving tobacco seed. These are seed pods that come from the flowers at the top of the tobacco plant. So each one of these contains these little granules, and these ones have been dried for quite a while, so a lot of them have already fallen out. As you can see, this is the bag that was underneath that bag, and these full of these very, very fine, tiny seeds, pepper-sized seeds. So that's what you would be looking at as far as tobacco seed. And for this year, I'm going to do some known varieties that I have, which would be the commercial varieties I purchased. So as far as what I've grown in the past, we'll start with the stuff I'm not growing this year, which is Habano and Comstock Spanish tobacco, both of which are cigar tobaccos. So Habano, the upper leaves, which are more flavorful, are used as the central core of the cigar, not the filler. I guess it's used as part of the blend of the filler. And then the lower leaves are used as wrappers, as well as the Comstock Spanish can be used as a wrapper for the exterior of cigars. I won't be rolling cigars this year, and I already have too much tobacco saved that I could be rolling cigars out of, so there's no need for me to grow more of that. So one of the interesting uses for tobacco is as a dusting for chicken mites, or mites which affect chickens. So I have some 1,000-year-old tobacco, which is something that is available locally to us. It comes from the Great Lakes. It was discovered at a native Canadian burial site. So it's maybe not the best thing to choose for smoking, but certainly will be an interesting thing to grow, and it would still have the nicotine content, which is the active thing that kills the mites when you use it for dusting chickens. So all you would do is dry your tobacco and crumble it up, and then you could dust the chickens directly, or you could mix it into their bedding, or you could put it in areas where they're rooting around and giving themselves dirt baths. So on to the fun stuff. I have 3 types of smoking tobacco. So the Black Sea Samsun is a Turkish tobacco, which I'll be using for making shisha, but it also makes a good tobacco for blending into cigarette blends. And these two are both, the Kelly burley tobacco and burley tobaccos in general are a staple of cigarette tobacco blends. And both of these are good for using in pipe tobacco blends. So I will probably be blending pipe tobacco out of those 2 and maybe all 3, and then aiming to make some shisha out of the Black Sea Samsun tobacco. So next thing is how we actually germinate tobacco seeds. So we're going to want some type of temperature control ideally. You can do it in a windowsill, because that will give you some day and night cycles of temperature, because you do want things to not only be warm, but you want them to get cold at night. Not cold, but cooler. So I'm going to run things off of a day-night temperature controller. The probe is in the soil, and this little photocell down here will sense whether or not there's daylight, and then adjust the temperature. So I have one for daytime temperatures and one for nighttime temperatures. So I'm running at 30 degrees Celsius, which is like 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 72, and no, 86 degrees, and 68 degrees during the night. So 30 degrees Celsius during the day and 20 degrees Celsius at night. And I got those numbers from a research paper that I found with some easy Googling around. So we have some pre-wetted trays here. Okay, so I've made some labels for different types of tobacco we're going to be growing, and then I'm going to plant those in these sets of seed cells. So there's some pre-wetted potting soil in there, and I'll just plant in a line like this, and I'll try to average somewhere around 5 or 6 plants per individual cell, and then when they get to be about 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall, I'll go through and thin each cell out to have 2 to 3 plants in it so that they don't get root bound and aren't too much of a pain to separate when they need to be potted up later. So we can get started. We'll start with the Black Sea Samsun, because that's closest to me. And there's not really going to be any point here to counting seeds because they're so small and it is so difficult. So what I like to do is just pour some out on a piece of paper. And so that looks to me like it would be about 15 seeds. Pick up about half of them on my fingertip and then move over here and just kind of rub them back and forth and let them land on the surface, trying to ensure to not spill the seeds over into the cells that are supposed to have other types of tobacco, because tobacco will be basically impossible to tell apart until it is much older, and even then it's not particularly easy to tell apart. So just kind of plant a reasonable amount of seed, and you can go through and kind of dust it into the surface, but you do not want to bury them. You want them right at the surface, which is one of the reasons that we're doing this in this seed propagation tray, which will have a cover on top, because they need to be kept moist. So the soil and on the surface will need to be kept moist, which is difficult to do without a cover and without heat coming from underneath. All right, so that's one variety down. Next, we've got the yellow mammoth. So I should mention, while I'm doing this, that another reason you may want to grow your own tobacco is if you are smoking tobacco and you want to get away from smoking commercially produced tobacco, there can be benefits both to the quality and to the purity of the tobacco leaf. Tobacco is actually filter plant, so it breathes a lot of the environment around it, and some of those things will be stored in the leaf. So if you live in a place that is not industrialized and you move away from smoking tobacco that is produced in an industrialized setting, there could be, although I won't say health benefits, there could be benefits to the quality of your tobacco, shall we say. And yeah, that could be another reason that it would be worth getting into doing that type of thing. Try to be careful too that you clear any of the old seeds off of the sheet of paper. And actually, the burley and the yellow mammoth tobacco that I have here is also organic seed. Can't remember where I got those from. It says Sustainable Seed Company on the package, but it was through another reseller, somebody like Whole Leaf, maybe. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. All right, so on to our last variety here. Just destroy this bag while I'm trying to get it open. Okay. So these, yeah, same very small seeds. And Actually, quite a bit bigger. I would say probably, those are like 3 to 5 times the size of the non-native Canadian varieties. So these will be an interesting experiment. So just sprinkle those on the surface again. Make sure we get them all. And yeah. So as I said, you'll want to go through and thin them when they get to be about 1.5 inches to 2 inches tall. So these will probably take somewhere between 8 to 14 days to germinate. And the worse your temperature control is, the colder it is, all those things will slow down the time it takes for the seeds to germinate. The seeds need to be moist the entire time. If they dry out for a day, it's quite likely they'll all be dead. So you do really want to pay attention to these. Keep them wet for the first 2 weeks, and then once the tobacco really starts to take off, they are a relatively easy plant to grow. There's not a whole lot of work. We have to monitor them for aphids. That can be a problem, but we can get into that later as we do more garden updates throughout the year. So I'm just going to take and spray some water over the tops. I did pre-wet this soil, so it was wet underneath, but I just want to make sure that the top layer is particularly damp. And then we'll throw on our lid like this, which doesn't have to fit perfectly, just enough to keep things relatively sealed. And then we'll take these upstairs with the rest of the plants, plug this into the wall, and let it run and keep things nice and warm. And we will probably be adding some tomatoes to this growth environment as well. They seem to enjoy the same type of temperature and humidity, and it looks like there's about enough space in there to start the rest of our tomatoes. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.